Hello orchid fans, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well, and if you're new to my channel, very welcome. I hope you enjoy. So I thought I will maybe do a few videos about fertilizers and fertilizing orchids and just kind of additives that I use in my collection. It's quite a difficult subject. It's actually a take two of me talking about it. I did another video. As soon as I kind of stopped filming, I realized it's just not good. It's quite difficult to explain, you know, what to do, how to fertilize orchids, what do you use, and you kind of know in your head what you're doing, but to kind of translate that out, I just find it a bit complicated. So I'll try again. Let's see how it goes. I think I'll maybe split this video into two parts. So I'll do one part about fertilizers and then the second part about the additives and what else I use for orchids, because sometimes fertilizers is not enough. Although, you know, some people don't use anything, they just water orchids with tap water, and if it's not too hard and you can do it, you know, the argument is that that's enough, and you know, people have nicely flowering orchids and they say that's good enough. So it's obviously everybody's individual choice, and you know, some people use a lot of things, some people use very few things. It maybe just depends as well where you are in your orchid kind of journey, if you're new or if you're very experienced. But I think it also depends on people's views. You know, some people think that there are certain things that you just should not use on your orchids, and some people actually love the products and they say, no, actually that is the main thing, you know, the main reason why my orchids grow so well. So let's just jump right in. I don't want to make it too long. So this is going to be part one, and I'll just cover only the fertilizers, and I'll just do a bit more detail on each type of fertilizer that I'm using here. So let's jump right in. Okay, let's go then. So here is what I've got in my arsenal. This is basically, you know, what I started using and what I'm currently using. So I just wanted to cover everything just to give you guys more options and just, you know, give some kind of perspective, hopefully. So here we've got Orchid Focus, Grow and Bloom, and honestly the brand doesn't matter. What this represents is the orchid fertilizers that you can get in garden centers, and most of the time what they will be is they will be very low concentration fertilizer. So you can see here, so you see there it says 1.8, 1.2 and 2.1. What that represents is the nitrogen. Sorry for the barking, honestly the dog is just can't settle down today. So it represents the nitrogen, the phosphorus and potassium concentration in the fertilizer. So you know, everything is basically, well, below 2 except potassium, which is 2.1, but you know, they're very, very low. So you know, if you use these as instructed, there is barely any chance you can burn your roots or, you know, burn the orchids, over fertilize them. The Bloom Fertilizer, I bought it, but honestly that was a waste of money. This is basically a full bottle and I think I'm just gonna chuck it out. It's got higher phosphorus level, and the reason for that is, you know, some people say that basically orchids need more phosphorus when they are in blooming stage or about to bloom, but there are actually, you know, studies done that show that it actually has no effect on blooming. So even if you use this fertilizer, it doesn't mean you're gonna get any more blooms or anything like that. You know, phosphorus is needed for orchids all year round, not just, or you know, during the growing season, not just when they bloom. So really, I would say, you know, if you're choosing between the two, or if you're looking to kind of get some fertilizer for orchids, just get that one, and just use this one all the time, whether they bloom or not. This is going to work pretty well. But yeah, if you use them as instructed, You know, you're not gonna burn your orchids, and I think it is good for beginners because it's low concentration, it's, you know, it's easy, it tells exactly what to do and how to fertilize. If you don't have a TDS meter or pH meter, and if you don't want to kind of be fussed with it, you know, you can use something like that. I think it's, you know, easy to use, good for beginners. So, you know, if you're looking to kind of start fertilizing your orchids and you don't want to get into all pH, TDS and all that stuff, you know, I think that this is good enough, you know, a kind of specific orchid fertilizer that you can use, and, you know, you can get from garden centers. It's easily accessible. You can use plant fertilizers as well, you know, like general houseplant fertilizers. That's okay as well, but just bear in mind that orchids are a lot lower feeders than, for example, you know, other houseplants. So basically just tone down on the concentration. So if it would say 5 milliliters per 2 liters, I would actually do 5 milliliters per 8 liters maybe. You know, so basically use like a quarter strength to make sure your orchids don't start burning. And then I've got the other three. I haven't got the brands here, and you know, kind of on purpose, because it's not the point, you know, the brand is not the point. It's really what type of fertilizer it is, and you know what it means. So this one here is basically organic fertilizer. So you see it says fish blood bone, and it's, you know, it's organic fertilizer. Again, it is accessible in garden centers, so it's quite easy to get. It's not specific for orchids, so again, you know, just be careful with it. The thing is, I tried using it, so I started using that a few times, and the way I would use it is I would take a little bit. You can see it's basically, you know, the ones I just showed you, they were liquid fertilizers. This is just powder form, if you like. So I would just take a little bit and just sprinkle in the pot. And when I did it the first time, I didn't water my orchids at the same time. I just left the fertilizer just, you know, on top of the pots, and it started molding. So mold started growing on it pretty fast. So a couple days later, my pots, you know, the top of the pots were basically just full of mold. But that's just because it's organic fertilizer, you know, that's just how it kind of reacts. I don't know, I just don't like it. It smells quite bad as well. So yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I know some people use it very successfully and they love it. And you know, they actually stopped using all other fertilizers. So it is something you can use on orchids, but I'm not using it anymore. I just think I would maybe just need to do a lot more research to be able to use it. So I kinda, stepped away from that one. And then the other two. So this is what I'm currently using. So this is Osmocote, you can see. So you can see the NPKs 18, 9, and 10. If you remember, when we looked at our garden center fertilizers, they were around 1 and 2. So yeah, that's the difference between, you know, the garden center fertilizer and kind of stronger fertilizers. This is also not orchid specific fertilizer. This is just this is slow release fertilizer. So it's basically got these granules, as you can see, and you can put, you know, some of them in the pot. And this one is a 12-14 month, so it means that it will release nutrients 12 to 14 months since, you know, you put them in the pot. So it is slow release, so it works for a long time. What I would say is that I don't use this on every single orchid, and what you will want to do is put this fertilizer when you maybe repot the orchid, so you can kind of spread it across the media, you know, inside the pot as well, not just put it on top. I would use it for higher feeders. You know, orchids that grow really well, or, you know, terrestrial orchids are usually they like more fertilizer, because in nature they would get more fertilizer as well. If they grow in the ground and kind of in the leaves, or decomposing kind of matter, you can imagine they get access to a lot more fertilizer or nutrients, let's say, a lot more nutrients than, for example, an orchid that grows on a tree, where the only nutrients are really anything that just comes through the leaves with the rain. So I would use these on higher feeders. If I, for example, chose to stop using fertilizer when watering my orchids, then I would probably put this slow release fertilizer in all my pots and then water with plain water, and then the fertilizer gets released, and that's how the orchids feed. The other thing is, with this slow release fertilizer, I don't know if all of them do the same, but this one, it releases nutrients. It depends on the temperature as well. So the warmer it is, the more nutrients it will release as well. So if it's cold, for example, it barely releases any nutrients, which I think is quite good as well, because usually in the colder season, your orchids slow down as well and they don't grow as much. So the fact that this is not gonna give up too much nutrients at that time is also, goes well with that kind of growing pattern, because when orchids are not growing as much, you don't want to be fertilizing them very much, because the roots are also kind of resting, so they're not going to take up all the nutrients, and you will just end up burning the roots, and they will just rot and die. So I think that works pretty well. I know that there is slow release fertilizers for orchids specifically, so if you're interested, you can look into that and see if this is something that you would be interested in to use, especially if you don't have time to be mixing up fertilizers every time you water and you want to kind of do it quicker. That might be quite a good option for you then. And last one, so this is basically the main fertilizer that I'm using, and this is Rain Mix. This is it's quite popular in the orchid world. You would a lot of people, a lot of orchid growers use this, and this is kind of similar to MSU fertilizer if you're in the US. MSU fertilizer would be like an equivalent to this. This Rain Mix was based on the MSU formula, so they are very, very similar. And again, as you can see, the NPK ratio is 12:14, which again, is a lot more than 1 or 2. So this is what I'm using, and basically with almost every watering, unless I'm flushing my orchids, or maybe soaking them in just kind of plain water, and obviously I wouldn't be putting feed in, but apart from that, I would be using this with almost every watering. What I do is, because this is powder form, so I can just put as much or as little of it to kind of regulate the concentration. So I would use kind of low concentration for when orchids are kind of resting, or just kind of starting to grow, or when they're kind of finishing up growing. And then I would use it at higher concentration, say 200 or 300 parts per million during the growing season. So that's how I would adjust. One thing just to note maybe, and actually I'll do that on all of them. So for this one, what I would say is when you put this in your water, just make sure you mix your water really well, and maybe wait for a few minutes as well, so that all these nutrients dissolve, or all this powder dissolves, and all the nutrients are kind of becoming available and ready for orchids to take on. What I would say about the liquid fertilizers is shake the bottle well before you open it and before you use it, because what I noticed with this was I would forget to shake it before I use it. So all the nutrients in this liquid, they would settle down to the bottom. So when I pour some of it into water, I would pour the top part, which is basically, it's got barely any fertilizer, so it's, you know, it is low concentration as it is, but it would actually be even lower concentration at the top. But then as I use up the bottle, all these nutrients, you know, they will mix up with less liquid, so the concentration becomes a lot higher. And then I noticed that some of my orchids started burning. So even though this is such a low concentration, you know, you can still burn your plants if you don't use it properly. Okay, so that was part one. I hope it made sense what I was kind of trying to explain. I hope I kind of, you know, the message came across. Yeah, let me know in the comment section below if you've got any questions, or what kind of fertilizers do you guys use. You know, I would love to kind of explore more options. You know, we can always make our orchids grow even better than they are at the moment. But I have to say, you know, I'm really happy with how my orchids are growing at the moment. They're doing really well. So, you know, I did my monthly update a few weeks ago, and I'll do another one in another couple of weeks. But there is honestly so much progress. Everyone is growing really, really well. So you know, I feel like I am kind of getting there with the fertilizer, but you can always do better. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in part 2. Bye. What this represents is